I was in a highly functioning position at the Florida Panthers down in Sunrise, Florida, a chief revenue officer spot. And before I knew it, it was like everything. I had no connection between my brain and my body. I couldn't form sentences. And for 2.5 years, I laid in a bed staring at a ceiling, not watching TV, not listening to the radio, just waiting for some kind of miracle pill to kick in.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview inspiring and influential guests who are making their mark on the world and contributing to the common good. Making your mark, big or small, is creating a legacy, and it's one of the proven ways we can age with energy and joy. Zestful Aging Podcast is my legacy. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker. Find out more at judybanker.com. And to find out more about this podcast, my web courses, and other offerings, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. While you're there, sign up for my monthly email newsletter, The Zest, where you're going to get behind-the-scenes looks at my interviews and other fun tidbits. And of course, I also have a Facebook group where we talk about things all aging and zestful. Just go to Facebook groups and enter Zestful Aging. I know that everyone is feeling really stressed and anxious right now. We're all unsettled and feel out of control. So I created a free download for you for maintaining mental health based on my 30 years as a psychotherapist. Just go to zestfulaging.com and it is all yours. Well, I've got my little loyal Jack Russell Sparky right by my side, but since we have a foot of snow right now, there's not going to be a hike, but we are going to have a great interview for you today. We're going to talk about a really important subject, which is the stigma of mental illness. And many of us have been aware of this problem, but as the pandemic lingers on, more of us are struggling with our mental health than ever before. And now is the perfect opportunity to change how we view and how we understand mental health. And we have the perfect guest to help us do that. Eric Kussin is a professional sports executive and the founder of We're All a Little Crazy. Eric brings together athletes, celebrities, and expert practitioners with the aim of decreasing the stigma related to mental illness. After a successful career that started at the NBA league office and led to senior management positions with a number of professional sports teams, Eric's mental health took a sudden and rapid decline. This decline left him almost permanently in bed and with severe cognitive impairment for just over 2.5 years. And once he found a way to climb out of his abyss, he vowed to spend the rest of his life focused on changing the global conversation through mental health advocacy. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you, Nicole. Your opening is so smooth that I feel like if I speak at all, I'm going to put a wrinkle in how great that was.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I am so glad that you're joining us today, Eric. I'm aware that we're starting to get some new statistics in about mental health and the pandemic. And of course, the suicide rate has been rising steadily over the years. But the last stat I saw was that it's increased 200%. And I really am interested in hearing your take because, you've said mental health is a continuum and that these kind of struggles are part of the human experience. But that's counter to the way the medical world views mental illness, that you either have a diagnosis or you're fine, right? Tell me about how you see this.
Sure. And I don't know if you teed me up in the intro by, using the term mental illness in there when talking about changing the conversation.
I see. No, I wasn't trying to be provocative.
All right. So I thought maybe that was poking the bear a little bit. And,
no, blast away.
It's interesting, Nicole, for a shorter form conversation like this, it obviously is difficult to go deep into my story, but the little bit that you shared about being a professional sports executive and then, essentially hitting a brick wall with my brain and my body becoming dysfunctional, almost what felt like overnight. And it wasn't overnight now looking back on it, but it felt at the time like it was. I was in a highly functioning position at the Florida Panthers down in Sunrise, Florida, a chief revenue officer spot. And before I knew it, it was like everything, I had no connection between my brain and my body. I couldn't form sentences. And for 2.5 years, I laid in a bed staring at a ceiling, not watching TV, not listening to the radio, just waiting for some kind of miracle pill to kick in, because what we hear so much in this space is you're either sick or you're healthy. And when you're sick, what do you do when you're sick? Well, when we grow up and we are taken to the doctor by our parents and we have strep throat, bronchitis, pneumonia, we take this thing called an antibiotic, and it is a miracle pill. And it helps us feel better in 2 days, and we sleep and we sweat off whatever fever we have. And then we go right on our merry way. So why wouldn't we think any differently when it comes to our mental health? You feel lethargic, you feel run down, you don't feel like you have things together, you're exhausted. So it makes sense that you'd expect a pill to kick in and help you.
Especially since you cannot turn on the television without getting blasted with different medications for every, are you depressed? Is there
Let's dive even deeper into that, right? How about that the commercials now have dumbed it down so much to the point where they're cartoon commercials instead of real people. And the cartoons aren't even of people. They're of blobs that have a face. And the blob has a sad face with gray clouds above it and sad music. And then 15 seconds into that 30-second commercial, a pill is introduced. The music becomes beautiful. The clouds go away. It's a blue sky. And now the blob is smiling, right?
I can hear how pissed off you are now.
Well, the reason why, look, it was the greatest tragedy in my life up until this point, but it's also been the greatest opportunity and given me a platform to be able to speak about it, because I technically ended up wasting 2.5 years of my life laying in that bed, trying over 50 different psychotropic drug combinations, because Nicole, I'm a stubborn bastard and I want to work my ass off to get better in anything that I do. And so even though I was at my most miserable place, my way of thinking I was working the hardest I could was hanging on for dear life, waiting for the next 4 or 6 weeks to pass by, which is the time period they give you to try the next psychotropic drug combination, hoping the new one would kick in. And that led to then trying TMS therapy, 23 sessions, 23 days in a row of getting my brain, interjected with electromagnetic waves to try and wake up my neurons. That led to the first ever feeling of a suicidal ideation, which led to my voluntarily going to a psych ward. In the psych ward then, being told by a top doc, and I use that in quotes, not because it's not true. She had the plaques all up on her wall, but she's looking at me and she's looking at medicine the conventional way that we learn about it and that they learn about in school. And she looks at my chart and she says, Eric, you've tried everything there is. Your last resort is to do shock therapy. So if that's what I heard and you're saying you hear it in my voice, that's because what we are taught, what we are shown, the marketing messages, and I'll get into kind of, how I came across the way that the marketing messages don't work for us and actually move us further away as a society is understanding this topic, is that I was that very person that bought into those messages because that's what we are educated through is these commercials. Because you look at, the timeline, you and I are both in New York. New York was the first state to require mental health education. And it was July 11th of 2018. That's how recently it was. You have the pandemic that comes in the middle of that between then and now, and people having to worry about just getting kids online with their computers and doing remote learning. Guess what? Social emotional learning is not really taking a priority right now when it should, given the numbers that you just described. We don't have a plate to put things on if we don't have social emotional health. That is the plate.
Yes. Yeah. So let me ask you this question, Eric. You're laying there, your brain is not working. You were a highly successful executive. You're laying in a bed, just counting the days down. What would have helped at that time? What would have been the intervention that would have gotten you out of that bed?
Well, what I came to realize after going through all those failed treatments was that I was sitting on this bedrock of stress and trauma. I when I grew up, from the time I was 8 years old until I was 23, so for about a 15-year period, I had an older brother who broke his femur bone in an accident, was in a body cast for a year, homeschooled, then diagnosed with ALL, a children's form of leukemia, 5 years of chemo radiation. A month later, is in a Jeep Wrangler with his friends. They bought it, with their permit, driving around. Car loses control. He flies out of the car, lands on his head, cracks his head open, loses partial vision in his eyes, in ICU for a month.
Oh.
Goes to college up by you at Cornell, where I went as well, but he went before me, and is feeling a pain in his knee. They do all the tests. Comes back that his cancer from childhood returned. So now they have to give him a much stronger chemo regimen. The chemo regimen, after a year, sends his body into what's called septic shock. Organs start attacking themselves, and he goes into a coma. And we're hearing from the neurologist, we don't know if he's going to wake or if he's going to have any brain activity. I'm up at school at this point. I'm driving back and forth. My parents are living at the hospital. 3 months of this, and at the 3-month mark, miracle again. He wakes and he's got his full cognitive faculties about him. But his kidneys fail from the rigor of the septic shock. He has to go on dialysis. We all get tested to see who's the closest match. My father donates a kidney to him. I finally feel like I'm in the clear, get my job at the NBA league office. And that first year out of school, 3 of my close friends, age 22 and 23, pass away unexpectedly of heart conditions, all separate cases. When you ask me what the reason I gave you that long answer to that short question, Nicole, is when you ask me what would I have hoped would have taken place when I was laying in that bed, just from an educational perspective, I wish what I would have known is that I was sitting on this bedrock of stuff. And the reason I didn't make that connection until a great integrative psychologist, who's still my great friend and my doctor to this day, helped walk me through that and help me understand that, is because when we're not feeling well with our mental health, what often happens is we go to our general practitioner and they give us a Prozac or a Zoloft, like that first level SSRI, or we go to a psychologist who says this is a little more intense than, quote, talk therapy. I'm going to send you a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist gives you that drug to try. And you think you have this thing called a chemical imbalance, and that's all it is. And you don't realize that you're sitting on this bedrock of chronic stress and trauma. And for anyone who's hearing that and saying, I haven't been through a traumatic event, I don't deal with chronic stress and trauma, divorce, job loss, breakups, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, bullying, cyberbullying, loss of loved ones, sickness of loved ones. I mean, the list is a mile long. I can go on with it. There's not a person in this world who doesn't deal with some, many, or all of those things that I just described. And so, if you going back to you ask me what I would have done, I wish I would have been educated in school. I wish my parents would have been educated, and my parents are both educators, and they weren't educated in this space. So we all thought I'm sitting there waiting for this miracle pill or set of pills or new pills to kick in. And, the way that I thought about it in my brain, that my brain is a soup and I'm trying to put the right ingredients into the soup to make the soup taste correctly.
So nobody said to you, which is what I say to my clients, is that trauma leaves a footprint on your brain, and we can see trauma on scans, and this is what needs to happen. Did no one explain to you that your brain had changed as a result of these events?
You know what's interesting, Nicole, is that you say that as a practitioner who knows her stuff in this space, okay? And I mean that very kindly. I speak to practitioners. We have something I got to talk about afterwards, an integrative psych alliance, we call it, which is practitioners who practice modalities beyond just traditional medicine and talk therapy. But you got to understand that I was going in New York City to seeing these traditional doctors who practice the allopathic way, and they have tremendous credentials, Harvard trained, Columbia trained.
The Columbia folks there. Yeah, I'm familiar with some of them. Yeah.
And it's not a knock on them. It's the way that they've been taught, but they've been taught you've got a brain problem with these chemicals in your system. You need some kind of synthetic brain chemistry to fix this.
And we would need another episode to talk about how they get trained, because I think that you're probably very aware that Big Pharma is providing a lot of their training. So, of course, they are going to be prescribing a Zoloft or Lexapro or something like that.
And the skeptic in you says, and by the way, when you and I talk about this stuff, I always say, hey, if I'm found in a ditch a week after this podcast, you'll know who did it, right? But, it's kind of like my disclaimer of protecting us. But, when you see something, let's take opioids for a second, like Purdue Pharma getting sued for being in cahoots with doctors selling more drugs. I'm not saying that happens to the same level with psychotropics, but it doesn't get your mind thinking, why are so many doctors going to this model? I think more of it is it's what they're taught. That's what I want to believe, and it's what they know. And so they aren't taught these other integrative type of models and other ways to heal. And so, in fairness to them, using either a psychiatrist or even a general practitioner as an example, when you go to that doctor and you're one of the lucky ones where a Zoloft or a Prozac or first-line SSRI works for you, you're going, and I'm going to throw out a percentage here that's just made up, you're going from feeling 62% of yourself back to feeling 77% of yourself. And all of a sudden you're like, this drug works. And so if you get that initial jump of that 15% from the 62 to the 77, the doctors high-fiving each other, you're high-fiving the doctor, you think things work. And then you don't realize that you're sitting on this bedrock of trauma, which means the 77 is going to go down to 74, to 68, to 62 and below over time. So even though you're one of the lucky ones who had that initial jump, guess what? It doesn't stay that way for life, because your pot continues to fill with more stress, more trauma over lifetime. If you do nothing about that, and those footprints that you just described remain there, and you do nothing to smooth over those footprints, our car just becomes kind of like that pushing the gas and the wheels just turning in that mud, creating the tracks even deeper and deeper and deeper.
I see. It's a structural problem.
Yes.
And I think many people would say that some of the meds just paper over that.
Yep.
But there's not, we're picking off the dandelion head. We're not going for the taproot.
And Nicole, give me 45 seconds to explain this, because I'm working with a functional medicine doctor right now as well. An SSRI is a reuptake inhibitor, the RI in there. All that means is whatever serotonin, or if it's an SNRI, norepinephrine, that is free flowing in my body from what my body makes, it inhibits the reuptake. So it keeps more of it in that synapse area, and it allows one neuron to fire to the other neuron and have more of it readily available. Well, if through stress and trauma over time, my brain-gut axis has changed, my inflammation in my cells have changed, the way that I absorb proteins has changed, guess what? I'm not making a lot of serotonin, making a lot of norepinephrine in the first place. So having a reuptake inhibitor isn't going to help me too much. And
well,
so
the other piece of this is actually it's never been proven that serotonin is the issue. And there have been studies of people who are horribly depressed who have so much serotonin that they can share it with all of us.
Yes.
So it's a theoretical construct. I think that seemed to make some sense and is easy to say to people, oh, you have a chemical imbalance.
Right. Because if you're trying to sell drugs, and you could equate it to, well, my mom has a thyroid condition and takes Synthroid, or you've got a diabetes problem and you take insulin. It's easy to say to someone, you have a serotonin problem, take this synthetic serotonin. And the reason why even though it's a theory, the reason why I explain the SSRI a little bit is to tell people you're not even taking more serotonin. You're taking something that they're saying is inhibiting the uptake of serotonin, so there's more free flowing available. It's not even a synthetic serotonin that you're taking, right? So how much does it really help? It never helped me, so I'll say that. So there were other ways I needed to learn how to heal.
Hey, lovely listeners. I have something really special to share with you. I recently interviewed Dr. Elise Bailu, who is the founder of Mindfulness in May. Every May, thousands of people worldwide join the program featuring the world's best experts and build mental resilience through committing to 10 minutes of meditation per day, while also raising funds to address the world's most urgent global issues. Over the last 8 years, Mindful in May has taught over 40,000 people to meditate while raising $800,000 to bring clean, safe drinking water to the developing world. Well, I'm going to give out 5 free registrations for Mindful in May to the listeners of Zestful Aging who write the most descriptive and original 5-star review of Zestful Aging on whatever platform you use to listen. And after you rate the show, please copy and paste your review and send it to me at zestfulaging.com with instructions on how to contact you. The contest ends April 30th. And I'll be joining the program in May, and I can't wait. And please check out mindfulinmay.org. It's really special. Look for Elise Bailu's episode coming soon. Now, back to the show. So you were in this state of non-function and with no education. So for you, it wasn't like, okay, now the chickens, I don't know if I'm using this, have come to roost. Is that the expression? Like, okay,
Yep.
the PTSD, the trauma, all of this stuff is breaking through. I need to deal with it. You were doing what we're taught to do, which is like, okay, I'm counting down the days. When's this medicine going to help me become the person I was before?
Absolutely. And when I had to leave my job, keep in mind my way that I knew myself, my identity as a person was Eric, the sports executive, right? I'd done that my entire life because I was Eric, the athlete growing up. And so when my owner looked at me in the eyes, military background, great guy, this guy named Vinny Viola, West Point grad, he said, take as much as time as you need, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, come back, hit the ground running. Well, when I heard 3 months as his kind of, it might not have been what his totality of what he would allow me to have was, but I heard that and I said, okay, I have at least 3 months to get back. Who's not going to get better on medication in 3 months? Worst case, I'll try 3 different drugs. One will kick in. Well, looking back after 2.5 years, that didn't, and that's why I use my story as much as I can to help people, because it breaks my heart, Nicole, to see so many people struggling. And they're saying, Eric, I don't get it. I'm doing the talk therapy. I'm doing the medication and I'm not getting any better. And then you go to these websites, I won't mention the names, but the largest nonprofit websites in our country, and you see for the recommendations, going back to the point of what you're talking about with this concept of mental illness, and they list the mental illnesses there. And then they say, here's the recommendations, top recommendations, scientifically backed, right? And it's a combination of medication and talk therapy. And what we push on our site, we call them STAR exercises, stress and trauma, active release and rewiring. It's this gym for the brain. It's this ability to actually take control of the processes, as you just described them, that our central nervous system often gets, tripped up on, just like any other system, from the stuff, those footprints that you're talking about that happened to us from earlier in life. We need to rejigger those circuits. And so we call them a release and rewiring. And, to instead of just waiting for this magic pill to kick in, that all too often doesn't happen, it breaks my heart to see these people in those same positions I was in. And I don't want to lose people anymore. And I don't want people to lay in bed anymore in these awful spots.
I think the understanding is so important, because that cuts through the shame and cuts through, the despair somewhat, I think, of like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And that adds a second layer of distress.
The fact that there is shame when, you and I are sitting here for 20 minutes now talking about stress and trauma. Does anyone choose choose for their parents to break up? Does anyone choose to lose someone early in their life? Does anyone choose to go through a bad breakup? There's some things that we choose. I've had people who they were the ones who made the decision to break up with someone, but then because of the way our minds think, they perseverate and obsess over that feeling that they had the day they had to make the breakup or whether it was the right decision. But for the most part, what happens is life hands us stuff. I kind of call it the cheeseburgers for the brain. And we witness those things. Well, if we eat a lot of cheeseburgers for our physical health, guess what? We put on weight and we get unhealthy. Okay, then the same thing applies. If we're getting a lot of cheeseburgers for our brain and we didn't ask for them, our brain just had to consume them because that's what we watched. Guess what? We have to find ways to burn that off. And to feel shame, and this gets into the minutia of now bringing up the whole mental illness piece is traditionally what we've been taught by the marketers out there, both pharma and the nonprofit organizations, is that 1 in 5 people have mental illness. And we need to stop stigmatizing that group of people. I think, the campaigns of Stop the Stigma, they sound like a great rallying cry. Like, yeah, Nicole, let's go out, let's stop the stigma, until you realize there's a whole group of people, 80+% of our population, who equate mental health and mental illness, think they're the same thing. And so when they hear mental health, they're thinking depression, anxiety, PTSD. So when someone says, stop the stigma, they're on the other side of it being like, I don't stigmatize you. I don't make these comments. Or maybe there's someone who is crass about it and they're like, don't slap me on the wrist. But it separates us into two groups. It's the people that we're protecting and then the people who we're claiming are
others.
Yes.
In others.
And that's the whole continuum thing, Nicole, now says if we can get everyone to say, which is why our campaign, instead of stop or erase or break the stigma, is same here. Right. It's because, Nicole, if you say same here, I've been through challenges, and I say same here, I've been through challenges. It doesn't matter that the challenges were or weren't exactly the same. It matters that those challenges impacted us and got us to this place right now where we're somewhere on that continuum. That erases stigma way more than any campaign saying stop the stigma ever will.
I see. It's so thoughtful. And I think you're just talking about like we all are in this.
Yes.
And maybe some of us less than others, but and as you've described, it's part of the human experience. Wow, what a different way to look at it. Have you found that people challenge or resist this idea?
No, the anytime that I get pushback, here's who it's from, and I totally understand it. It's from the people, of which I am one of them, right? So I always preface it. It's from the group of us who would be considered in the traditional 1 in 5 group, right? So my diagnosis is PTSD. And so I think there's this concept, because we've been talking about the 1 in 5 for so long, because NAMI's been around for 40 plus years now, there was this protection mechanism of they have it worse than anyone else, right? And by the way, laying in bed for 2.5 years, dysfunctional, is having it pretty friggin' bad. I'm not going to lie, right? But I think what we need to open up our eyes to is, do we compare that this person has a worse cancer than the next person? Or do we try to support and comfort everyone who has cancer, right? So if those of us who are at the point on the continuum where we've reached the point of mental illness, oh, by the way, not only this genetic thing that we either have or don't have, something that all of us can develop, guess what makes us feel all in it together? When we all know that we're susceptible to it and we're all part of that continuum, that makes us feel more comforted. So if I get pushback, it's from the people in the 1 in 5 who say, you're really minimizing my struggle. My point to them is say, but then if not, we live out on an island and we're the only ones going through it. And that's not the way that society should treat this. And in fact, it's being reactive with those 4 in 5 people, where how many times do we hear stories, Nicole, of, well, we lost that person to suicide. You never would have thut, not them, right? It's because we're not proactively getting in front of these people. We're not, and I know you talk so much about aging on here. It makes me think about how, I talk about this with my parents all the time. Like, there's these excuses, and I'm going to call them excuses, and I hope no one gets upset at me using that term, is, well, I'm older now. I've already been through those things before. I've already witnessed the birth of children, or I've already witnessed, my team winning Game 7 of a World Series. It's not that exciting to me anymore, or I don't need to go out and dance anymore because I did that when I was younger. Is that really what the case is? Or do these biological processes of change, what happen to us emotionally over time, make it so that we're not able to enjoy those things as much as we used to? And is there, if we work on our mental health and we take our gym to the brain, might we be able to enjoy those things that we enjoyed at a younger age as much, if not even more, because of the perspective that we gained if we work our brains out?
This is so profound. And I'm like, there's not much more interesting to me than what we're talking about right now. It's so important. So let me ask you, we're sort of provocative here. Would you do away with the field of psychiatry?
No, I'd morph it into what, we're working with our folks on the professional side of things, which is more of a study into functional neurology. I think that there is what we see, I think that's long-term. What we see coming together is this idea of integrative psychology, psychiatry, psychotherapy, meeting with functional neurologists so that we get a full picture of the individual. And we could understand, how did trauma impact them, and how did that impact the trauma plus their genetics impact their biological processes, the way that, you've heard all these different terms like
the loan, the gun, and
yes,
that expression. Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, isn't that such a better way to get to the source of why we're feeling what we're feeling than treating the end result and saying, this person has depression, so let's give them the depression pills. It never worked for me. And I think why I struggled for that 2.5 years was it allowed me to learn just how much doesn't work. And I know my thing is different things work for different people. So I'm not going to say there's one silver bullet. That's why we have a gym for the brain. But what I will say does work best for most people is this combination between working out our neural circuitry through these STAR type of exercises and functionally working with a functional medicine doctor to find out from a genetic perspective and the way that our brain gut axis works and how our leaky gut is, changing nutrition, changing supplements, and introducing things that give us a greater chance to be able to function optimally.
So you're just talking about a total makeover here to one of much more holistic and educational, and I think welcoming, like, yes, as you say, same here. Come on in. Let's see where we need to reboot. And by the way, you can look at these scans of people who have PTSD. The brain really does react and change.
I love that you said the scan. So I was offered to go to Dr. Daniel Amen's office and get the SPECT scan that they do. And they showed me this triangular group of parts of my brain. I can't remember all 4 off the top of my head right now. But that they all lit up, meaning that when I had to perform a task right before and they put the iodine in me to make it light up, they could see that those 4 areas lit up, which is indicative of PTSD. Now, not everyone could afford a SPECT scan. They were nice enough to give it to me for free if I was willing to write about it. And I get that, right? But Nicole, there's no denying that everybody goes through things that impact us. And if that's the case, maybe we don't all have PTSD, but we all have PTS in some way. We all have,
especially now.
Yes.
I mean, who is it? This whole generation is being sort of marinating in stress.
It's amazing, and yet, look, I'm very big on understanding the need for us to be socially distant and to wash our hands and to do all the things that are being recommended. Right. But when you're starting to see some of the outcomes also, and I know you as a mental health practitioner will agree with me on this, sadly agree with me on this, is we haven't even seen the impacts from this pandemic on our mental health in terms of aggregate numbers, because stress and trauma build cumulatively. So all the people who think they're resilient, like I did when I was working those 15 years in professional sports and mental health wasn't a topic for me, nose to the ground, push, work. I love what I'm doing. Eventually it catches up to you. And so being proactive right now and educating people that what they are sitting on and what they're living through right now is impacting them, even if they can't feel it in the moment, is so important for us to get in front of this.
Wow. So back to like the makeover, because I'm just thinking about sort of my training, the tools that I use, DSM, throw it in the garbage, rework it. What's your take on it?
Look, the politics of insurance companies and being able to get reimbursed, I don't know that it's going anywhere anytime soon. If I could wave a magic wand, yes. I mean, and Nicole, I'll introduce you to the folks that we're working with, a woman named Deb Simpkin down in Florida, for example. She's a trained integrative psychiatrist and functional neurologist at the same time, working with adolescents. And, same thing, like these doctors all say to me, Eric, we don't have a depression and serotonin problem. We have a processes of change and what goes on in our system problem that lives off of this combination of stress and trauma, lifestyle, and genetics. And when you look at those three things, if we treat that instead of treating the end cause, or excuse me, the end label, but I get that systems take a long time to change. I also get back to the pharma comment. There's people who have every reason for us not to want to get this message out there. And I see that every day on our social media channels, how things get suppressed. So I'm not averse to that. This is an uphill battle, but like you said at the beginning of your intro, how this is your legacy. I think I went through what I went through because this is my legacy to be a part of fighting this. It happened to me at a young enough age where I can dive fully into it and make it my full-time career and my passion. And that's what I've been doing the last 3 years.
So tell me a little bit about the programming. And, one thing I'll say is I went on your website and it's not like, 5 or 6 professional athletes. This is pages and pages and pages and pages and faces of all kinds of, the most successful you can be as a wrestler or as a skier or whatever. I mean, I'm sort of switching gears here, but was it surprising for you to see how many people would jump on this program with you?
So the candid answer is no, only because once when I shared my story and people started calling me, everyday people, saying, Eric, I lost a child to SIDS 5 years ago and I've never been the same. Eric, I broke up with my husband 10 years ago. I'm remarried and I love my current husband. I have two great kids, but that pit in my stomach that I was talking about before, that's never left me. That made me realize that it doesn't matter if you are a professional athlete, an actor, an actress, a musician, an artist, an everyday person. We all face these challenges that when you give people an opportunity to open up based on their story and their stories of challenge, not based on their disorder, that's what is the thread that ties us together. My friend Brian, he said to me, so what you've created is a tribe that everyone in the world is already a member of. They just don't all know it yet. Right?
That's
and I thought that was
perfect.
To give him credit. That was brilliant on
yeah.
his part. So to your point about, how like getting all these different athletes or celebrities to join, it was as simple as, no, I shouldn't say as simple. I'm making, but talking to them on the phone, being connected through common contacts and just sharing my story. Once you share your story, you create the safe space for them. They share their story, and then you say to them, look, I'm not asking you to share alone. I'm not asking you to raise your hand and say, I have bipolar. I'm asking you to share, when my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old, that really impacted me, right? And yes, it takes brave people to do that, but I think it's a little bit easier to share than just the label, number one. And then number two, when you're sharing it with other people, it certainly helps that you're not the quote only one. And then, I pitched them on this idea. When I say pitch, not from a sales perspective, but like this vision concept of, if we can get people with platforms, circle 1, doctors and practitioners, circle 2, everyday people, circle 3, and combine all these experiences where you have experiences of very successful people, experiences of everyday people, the knowledge of all these practitioners who understand the things that you were joking with me about where the change needs to happen. We could package it with a strong marketing message, which is same here, and we're all a little crazy in quotes, and now use our brand partnerships like, different schools, different colleges, different sports teams and leagues to get those messages out through the people that we're working with, them partnering with those brands and those companies to now train the masses and help them better educate. That to me can bring about real change. And so that's, I've been fortunate to have those folks who've been willing to, kind of put their flag in what we're doing and saying, I'm on board. I like what you're building.
And you're the perfect person because were already an expert in promotion. So you're promoting something that's really near and dear to your heart rather than maybe a sports team.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've seen so many good posts lately about no one's really an expert. We're all figuring it out as we go. And, so maybe some of us are more well experienced in certain things. So I don't know that, I could call myself an expert at anything other than to say, I do think I have empathy and I have, EQ, and I can read very quickly how people feel about stuff. And so even mentioning the term mental illness, for example, that puts me on edge when I hear that term, even though I would be diagnosed as someone with mental illness. It gives me this charge. Okay, well, now I know if I use the term mental illness and even mental health because it gets equated with mental illness. Why, Nicole? Because if we go to a newspaper stand or a magazine stand at an airport, if you see a magazine on physical health, it's six-pack abs, it's big pecs, it's home workouts. You see a magazine on mental health and it's imagine what it's like being inside their head, right? Like those are the headlines that we see. And so, what people think of when they hear mental health and mental illness, all I'm doing is I'm saying I'm an individual who could put my finger on the pulse and say, these messages are just off and they don't get us to where we feel like we're together in this and it relates to the everyday person. And that's what we need. So, been lucky. And then, diving a little bit deeper is we have programming in 5 main areas of focus: K through 12, colleges and universities, sports teams and leagues, corporate offices, and then servicemen and women and first responders. And that's only done as a way to try and break up this massive 7 billion person population into strategic buckets. Most people fit into either school or school kids and office, right? So you usually can get in front of most people that way. But if I'm right in this hypothesis that it's 5 and 5 and not 1 and 5, this is where my pitch to everyone out there is: my organization is never going to be the be all end all. NAMI is never going to be the be all end all. JED Foundation is never going to be the be all end all, because there are 7 billion people who need these messages. It's time we started holding hands and working together with the same messages in a consistent way to help as many people as possible, and for organizations not to look at each other like competitors.
Wow. That's a lot. You've brought together so many different facets of this. So let's just pretend I am in France and I'm listening to this interview. We have a lot of followers from France. And I think to myself, this makes a lot of sense. And I really want to get on board with this. What is the first thing that someone might do to challenge their old ways of thinking about emotional and mental health?
Sure. So on our site, I would start by reading the stories of these recognizable figures. That's why we put that front and center. Okay. So you see their thumbnails and you could click in there, and when you read their stories, what's relatable again is that they're sharing things that they've been through in life. And because we have these motor neurons in our brains, you read that and you say, that sounds similar to me, my Aunt Nessie, my cousin Bill, right? And so you start to say, okay, I can see how this concept of mental health applies to me. Then you go later down on the page and there's these star exercises. And before you ever get into the exercises, we have one video and another one that we'll be uploading soon from a guy who's more accomplished on the athletic field than I ever was. He was the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers when they won the Super Bowl a number of years ago, one of their Super Bowls, I should say. And what we share in that video is an explanation for why we don't know what we don't know, and why we should be having openness towards these other practices that, might be considered these things called Eastern, functional, holistic, or alternative. Those terms, all they do, they're meant to stigmatize what actually works. That's why we call it STAR. So you have a better scientific explanation of what's happening in your system. And so when you watch those videos and you read the profiles of the practitioners who are making the sign themselves and who are writing and filling out the profiles themselves to explain to you what the different exercises are, now you could be an educated consumer, and a consumer for yourself, meaning your health is what you're buying for. Your family's health is what you're buying for. And when I say buying, meaning buying in, not spending anything. Everything on the site is free. but you're buying in so that now you could look at the world in a different way and say, okay, I waited in the past like Eric did until a catastrophe happened, until I became dysfunctional. I just thought I'd never get that way. I didn't have to focus on my mental health. Well, think about it. If we thought about our physical health that way, then we'd all sit on the couch, watch TV, eat nachos, never get up, live a sedentary lifestyle, and we'd get diabetes and heart disease by the time we're 28, 30 years old, all of us. And then we'd hope that some magic pill would just make us feel better. That's essentially what we're doing with our mental health. And it's really scary.
Yep. So what you would advise this person is to hop over to your website. So tell us exactly how to find out about these STAR exercises, read the bios of these professional athletes and other celebrities. Where do we go?
Thank you. So the name of the website is Same Here. That's our campaign, SAMEHERE Global, samehereglobal.org. And the athletes are listed up there. The STAR exercises are listed up there. We have in our Same Here Alliances a global integrative practitioner alliance. And if there's not one in your area or in your country, that's what we're networking to do right now, is bring together. That's, Nicole, why I want to introduce you to Dr. Pleener on our end, is meeting these practitioners from all around the world who believe in this concept of getting to the source, so that, my hope is anyone who's going through anything or wants to be proactive with their mental health has a quarterback like you that they can come to and say, Nicole, what do I do? Where do I start? I need someone to hold my hand through this.
And really provide the education. I'm sure you know Bessel van der Kolk,
of course,
who talks about, and so that's a book that I hand out like Tic Tacs. It's like, look at the picture. This is not you being soft, or you having not having character, or you being damaged. Look at the brain. You did, you couldn't even do that. This is all happening biochemically. And now we know because we can see inside the brain. So it's taught us so much.
Or in Bessel's case, that trauma being stored in your psoas muscle in your neck. And how many people do we see walking around and it looks like they're in physical pain? And it's really related to the trauma that they've seen over their lifetime.
The issues are in the tissues.
Yep.
That's what they say.
I like it.
So, samehereglobal.org, they can go on and read about this. It's just incredible shift in mindset. And boy, this idea of like, we're really so much more alike than we are different. How, that's transformative in and of itself. And I could see that would have very positive ripple effect, especially now.
Nicole, I could tell you that some of the most endearing things in the world to me and humble me so much is when I go to a school and it's second graders and we take a picture at the end, and you see these schools with kids with all these diverse backgrounds all standing up and making the sign together. Or we have people from all over the world who speak different languages. They tag us on social media. I should have shared that at @samehere _global, where we have communities and people can actually, tap into those communities. And we see people from all over the world talking and sharing with one another and supporting one another. I think that's why the sign is such a big piece of this as well, because, languages sometimes separate us if we speak different languages. But a sign that says, I'm part of your tribe, like we're all in this together, that transcends anything. And that's what we need. We need to support one another, especially in this world that's divided by politics, especially in this world that's divided by social issues. There's one thing that is common and is part of all of us, and that is that life experiences impact all of us. We should all be able to come together around that.
It's such important work, and I can hear the passion in your voice, and I can hear how, it's just radiating from you, how invested you are and how deeply satisfying this work is for you.
Leaving sports, I didn't, because you play sports as an athlete and then you're fortunate enough to get your dream job out of school and parlay that into other positions. And hopefully that doesn't come off in a heady way. I realize how lucky I was to be able to do those things, and that, luck had to fall my way in many cases. But when I was working in sports, I pinched myself because I thought, wow, this is the dream job. I could never find anything better than this. You asked the question earlier about, being in the office and doing that versus doing this right now. And I could tell you that I'm having more fun and more energized and more enthused by doing this than anything I ever did in sports. It's because my canvas is the entire globe instead of the 75-mile radius around the building that I used to market from. My product is not just tickets and sponsorship. It's everything. Mental health literally touches everything. And the people I get to work with are all drawn towards the same cause and on the same team working together to help people.
I talk about a contribution to humanity.
I hopefully, Nicole, it's interesting. I'm not looking at it that way yet. And I love that you said that. Like, I look at it as I'm a competitive SOB and I want to change the way that people see this. And I want to give, there's a draw to me that is every individual person that I speak to, every group of people that I speak to. I don't want them to ever suffer the way that I did. So that's the, I guess, altruistic piece of it. I haven't looked at it yet from a global perspective of look at the great global change we could bring about. Despite the fact that the name is Same Here Global, it almost becomes I want to get the details of the X's and O's and the small things down the right way instead of focusing so much on the big picture to start. Okay. And maybe that's a protection mechanism in my own brain. And that way, if I fail at this, I don't feel so bad at it. But I'm a true believer. So Alex Rodriguez, who played for the Yankees, he told a story a couple of days ago that his manager, Joe Torre, he was in the middle of a slump. And Torre said to him, Alex, big things happen when you focus on the little things. And he got up to the plate and he took a swing and he missed by a mile. And he'd been in this long slump, and he saw Torre in the dugout, and Torre took his hands from out wide and just said the little things. He lipped it and he moved his hands inside. And that next pitch, all Alex did was focus on his legs. He said, okay, I got to torque my legs a certain way. Bam, hits a home run over the left center field the next pitch. And, those are the things that motivate me, because I think if you get the minutia of the little things down on an everyday basis, the world rewards you when you're doing stuff that it is meant to help other people in a bigger way.
Oh, wow. It is so exciting. And I just feel so honored to have you talk about it on the show. And I wanted to just repeat it for folks. It is samehereglobal.org. It's a fascinating website. You're going to learn a lot. And it sounds like that's the first step in really challenging some of the narratives that we have been believing for years about mental health. Thank you so much, Eric. I so appreciate your energy and your work.
No, I feed off of your energy as well on this call. So thank you for all the passion that you bring. And I think that intersection of aging gracefully, aging with enthusiasm and passion, and mental health, I think they're so intertwined. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Hey everyone, I wanted to tell you about a powerful new tool that supports your mental and emotional health in what are extremely trying times. And you may remember that I've been a psychotherapist for 30 years, and I'm always a little suspicious of products that claim to help us feel less anxious, depressed, or worried. But then I was introduced to a new kind of app called Cope Notes, and I have become a big fan. Cope Notes was developed by a guy who spent a lot of his life trying to figure out what might help support him through his own weekly psychotherapy sessions. Cope Notes is an app that gives you random texts through the day to break through some of the negative messages that might be repeating in your head. It's well researched and has been adopted by many mental health facilities. I highly recommend it. I think we can all use a little support right now. So check out Cope Notes gmail.com/zestful. I will receive a small portion of those proceeds. And I'd love to hear your feedback about how it works for you. Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. It's no secret that everyone's feeling pretty restless and unsettled right now. Our lives are upside down and the future is feeling pretty uncertain. But if you're anything like me, organizing my stuff can help me feel a little calmer. It's something I can do to help me feel a little more in control and in charge of my own life. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.